President Trump doubled down this week on talk of Canada becoming the 51st state as the trade war with our northern neighbor shows no signs of slowing down. That's despite Ontario Premier Doug Ford traveling to Washington to meet with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Joining me now to discuss the tensions, Canadian Ambassador to the U.S., Kirsten Hillman. Ambassador, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Appreciate it. So Canada's got a new prime minister, former central banker Mark Carney, but new leadership does not seem to be changing the president's tune about making Canada the 51st state. He said it again, as you just heard this week, sitting next to NATO's Secretary General. Does Carney take that seriously? Is that why these two leaders haven't connected yet?
I think we take seriously our sovereignty. We take seriously the will of Canadians, and over 91% of Canadians are, not interested in a discussion around joining the U.S. So I think he takes that seriously. And that's not a slight to the president, and that's not a slight to the American people. It's an expression of our own patriotism and our own sense of who we are as a country. So I think Prime Minister Carney will be looking to speak with the president as soon as possible and looking to forge a good and solid relationship.
Have they reached out from either side yet?
We've reached out, yeah, and we're looking forward to having that, having them connect.
Okay. Your foreign minister, though, appears to be quite alarmed, saying that Trump's tariffs are a tool to annex Canada by economic force. She referred to Canada as the canary in the coal mine and reportedly said at the G7 this week, if the U.S. can do this to us, their closest friend, then nobody is safe. The New York Times also reported this month that Canada's finance minister was spooked by a call from Howard Lutnick claiming that President Trump had come to realize that the relationship between the United States and Canada was governed by a slew of agreements and treaties that were easy to abandon. Mr. Trump was interested in doing just that. That's just one report. But are you under the impression that any other aspect of the U.S.-Canada relationship is on the rocks right now besides trade?
I am not. I think that what we need to be doing, and I know that Prime Minister Carney wants to do, is to establish, a serious and professional conversation around the president's goals with respect to trade. We had a meeting with the Commerce Secretary Lutnick and USTR Greer this past week, and we understood from them his whole global agenda in this respect. And we talked about how Canada can fit into that. So that's the conversation we want to have. Serious conversation, respectful conversation. The new Prime Minister respects what President Trump's trying to do. He's trying to supercharge the U.S. economy for American people. And that's what he's also trying to do for Canada. So they have a lot in common. I think it'll be important to proceed with that discussion in a professional, measured way.
Your defense minister said yesterday that Carney asked him to review Canada's purchase of 88 F-35 American fighter jets. That was the biggest investment in the Canadian Air Force in 30 years, 19 billion Canadian dollars. Is military cooperation between these two countries through NORAD in question, or is Canada just looking for a new best friend?
No, God! No, God, please, no! No! No!
Well, I think we're always looking for many friends. I think that the world is a dangerous place. Your previous interview just with Mr. Waltz shows that it's a very complicated and dangerous place. So we want to have all of the strongest alliances that we can. We're your neighbor. We protect this continent together. We protect Canada's really very serious about all of the investments we're making in protecting the Arctic. So that homeland is a huge priority for us, and our homeland is your homeland. But beyond that, obviously, there are many other allies that we want to be working with as well.
You were in a meeting this week with Secretary Lutnick and the U.S. Trade Representative.
Yes.
Did you walk away from that meeting with the impression that Canada can do anything to avoid the reciprocal tariffs the president's going to impose on all countries on April 2nd?
I think that they were clear to tell us that on April 2nd, there will be announcements that will affect the whole world, including Canada. That was clear. And we took that opportunity to talk about how Canada fits into the fairness agenda for the United States. We are your biggest customer. We buy more from you than any other country on the planet.
You son of a bitch.
Manufactured goods trade in all sorts of areas of trade where Americans are building things. And that is hopefully a relationship that can continue in a really productive way. So we talked a lot about that.
Is Canada working to adjust its tariff rates right now? The president's also looking to use these reciprocal tariffs to drive new agreements on everything from exchange rates to subsidies. So what's in the works from the Canadian side?
I think we're going to wait and see what the U.S. president does, what President Trump does. We have an arrangement, the USMCA, that governs our trade. It was negotiated by President Trump. That is the arrangement that we felt was fairly effective, and he clearly wants a new one. And so we'll have to look at all of the different possibilities there for Canada, because in these kinds of negotiations, both sides will come to the table, with things that they'd like to see different.
Okay. New deals obviously take time.
Yeah.
And that time could have a bigger impact on the Canadian economy than the U.S. economy. The New York Times reports economists believe the tariffs imposed so far, Canada's retaliation against U.S. imports, and the overall atmosphere of volatility and uncertainty could tip Canada into a recession this year. What's Canada doing right now to avoid a recession?
Well, so just as I say, our new Prime Minister, that's his core focus, is the Canadian economy, strengthening the resilience of the Canadian economy, and being able to make it through these more turbulent times in a way that is as good as possible for Canadians. So that includes a lot of domestic investment. That includes looking at our energy proposition. That includes looking at diversification of our trading relationships. There's a lot of different things that we'll be looking at here just to make sure that we're doing the best for Canadians.
Finally!
Carney doesn't hold a seat in Parliament. His party holds a minority in the House of Commons. He's going to have to call an election, federal election, very soon here. Liberals have made gains in recent weeks, but according to recent polling in Canada, the Conservatives are still favored. Carney's tenure basically could be very short. Is that having any impact right now on talks to rebalance the trade relationship?
Fundamentally, Canadian interests are what they are, regardless of who is governing our country. And if you listen to the leadership, political leadership in Canada across the spectrum, very similar messages are being conveyed. One, Canada is strong and proud independent nation. Two, Canada is going to focus on making sure that it's strong in its own economy, that it's taking care of, our own business, and then making sure that we have an effective and productive and successful relationship with our neighbor and biggest trading partner. There are nuances in how those messages are conveyed. There are differences in priority in other areas, but on the Canada-U.S. relationship and our economic relationship, I think you're going to hear pretty much the same thing across the board.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Still have hockey, right?
We still have hockey. I would like to mention the win, but we still have hockey, and honestly, that game was incredible. The best players in the world all together on the ice. It was a remarkable moment.